Yesterday, I was speaking about the narcissistic dungeon that you are drawn into, and then they keep you there for a period of time in order to make you feel as crazy as they are, in order to submerge you into their crazy reality. And I would like to talk about that for a little moment. So, can you see this? Yes, you can. Wonderful. Okay. So, if you imagine a timeline, so there's a period of time, the beginning of the relationship, and then as the relationship progresses, and this is across time. What happens is that you become, as an individual, you become submerged. I'm now going to draw a human person. Do not judge me. There is its head, body, legs. Oh, you look great. That's a human person. Across time, you're caused to be submerged into this alternate reality, this crazy dungeon, this crazy underworld. And we use the word crazy advisedly here because in here is delusional and psychotic fantasyland, a Disneyland for lunatics, as it were. And you are going to be told you want to be in this space, you want to be here. And you'll be thinking, this is not very pleasant. This feels terribly dungeony. It feels very repressive. There's not much light getting in here. I don't have much room to move. And you will be told, no, you are ungrateful. This is wonderful. You should love this. Everybody dreams of this. And you're finally getting to experience it. You lucky so-and-so. So you have your actual reality is continuing across time. Like the real world doesn't go away. So you're, can I give it eyes? I have made a human person. It's my creation. I am your God. Yes, I am your God now. Worship me or I'll scribble you out. So I do amuse myself. So reality is what did I say about delusional psychosis? Reality is continuing, but across time, you're forced to submit in the Untergang, the downgoing of the delusional psychotic fantasy land. Reality continues. So within that space, you will be receiving an awful lot of conflicting messages because across time, reality is telling you one thing, and the narcissistic, delusional, psychotic fantasy land space is telling you something else. When we talk about splitting and we say splitting is occurring, I think it would be useful to try and think about it in these terms. So the split, as far as people who are involved in narcissistically abusive relationships are concerned, the main split is here, is the split between the narcissist's delusional fantasy land that they're forcing you into and the signals you're getting from reality itself. Now, obviously, what's happening is there's data coming in from the outside, and then how would you represent that? And then there's data, use this, that's internal. So you have your own internal cognition and perceptions, and then you have your external data that you're receiving. So this would be your introjects, your inner dialogue, the way you're processing reality. Obviously, as external data comes in, what happens here is when external data comes in, it's perfectly natural and normal for people to distort, delete, and generalize reality. So as you're distorting and deleting and generalizing reality, you're building a map of reality. the map of reality that you have never matches real reality. That's perfectly normal. There's always going to be something of a divide there. So in a normal person, there's a little bit of a gap between reality and our fantasies, our prejudices, the way our personality governs our perception of reality. The narcissist goes into that gap. They slither into that gap, and then they stretch it out as far as they can and push you down as far as they can into this delusional, psychotic fantasy land. Now, what I'm seeing based on the comments that I've read comments for the last couple of days. I don't usually read comments. Is the experience of narcissistic abuse, when it is narcissistic abuse, is so unique. It's actually quite hard for people who've not been in narcissistically abusive relationships to appreciate or understand the experience. And what I've seen is a few outbursts here and there from people who are getting very angry and very frustrated and saying, this isn't real. It can't be real. What's happening to you, or what you're claiming is happening, you're just making it up. So what they're saying is, you're having a bad experience, you're having a bad relationship, and then you're layering on all of this complex ideology over the top of it, when basically you're just having a normal interaction with a person who's having a bad day. My counter to that would be, if that were the case, why would there be such a collective unity of agreement on what it feels like to be in a narcissistically abusive relationship? Why would there be such a collective unity of agreement on what narcissist strategies are? Because if we were all inside of a forum or an online space and somebody was saying the narcissist always loves pineapple on pizza, and somebody else is going, no, that wasn't true for me, then you would have way more division and way more fracturing. But you don't. The most common thing people will say in the comments is, oh my God, my narcissistic ex said exactly the same thing to me. From Zimbabwe to Croatia to Osaka to Minsk to Stockholm, everywhere in the world, it's the same thing that shows up every time. So I think we can say something is happening here that is a specific and distinct entity. I don't want to say whether it's a clinical entity. That's for the clinicians to decide. It's a specific set of circumstances that's playing out again and again, and it has the same effect. And then if I come along and I suggest something like I was saying yesterday, it was like I did a sort of a jokey live yesterday, half joking, half serious, where I was like, oh, this is the dungeon, this is the oubliette that David Bowie from Labyrinth is going to shove Jennifer Connelly into, and you're Jennifer Connelly and blah, blah, blah. If that was absurd, then people in the comments would be like, that's not my experience at all. But it wasn't what they said. They were like, oh my God, this is what it's like. The point I'm alluding to here is, I don't want to psychologize you even more than our culture naturally psychologizes people. I really don't want to do that. So what I'm suggesting is that we do two things at once. We let go of psychologizing everything. We let go of being covertly coerced into the role of psychotherapist for every interaction and every crisis that happens in life. We let go of that, but we embrace trying to find useful metaphors and useful ways of writing ourselves out of this story. Essentially, we've been written into an evil script. We've been written into a nasty script. We kind of have to rewrite the narrative and write our way out of it. And that's what metaphor and new narratives allow us to do. Because if you don't have the metaphor of a dungeon, you just have a vague feeling that something kind of dungeony is going on. And then somebody says, oh, that's like going into a dungeon. And then you see, wow, everybody's saying it's like going into a dungeon. That's exactly my experience. That's a useful metaphor to get out and to get on with your life, not to dwell in the sort of psychoanalytic, like I agree with some of the criticisms that people have been making. It's an awkward alignment between actual academic, clinical, peer-reviewed, research-based literature and then stuff that people are saying online. And then they're attacking me for it. And I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do? I admit it. It's not great. It has and will continue to create a bit of a mess, but people need help. What if there's another option? If there's another way of doing this, tell me what it is. The other thing that happens inside of this space, so you have your external reality is coming to you, you have your internal reality, then you're living your life across time, and there's this split between the external reality, the signals that real reality is giving you. And this, I want this to include the signals that you're processing. He seems to be being abusive. She seems to be manipulating me. That's also internal, and it's based on external observations. But that is wrenched apart. It's pulled apart. It's fragmented and fractured as you are covertly coerced back into the delusional psychotic dungeon space. No, your reality, you can't see reality. I see reality. You don't see reality. And so you end up with this split. Sorry for those of you who've heard me talk about this before. The split, this rending. We'll keep calling it a split. We'll keep calling it a split, but really, it's kind of I quite like arcane language. It is a rending apart between your real reality and then the fantasy space. And so your capacity to hold on to reality is they cleave it. They cleave through it. They cleave through your capacity to hold on to reality so that you go back into the space. What you end up with across time is a person that emerges on the other side who is going to end up being like half a person living in two separate realities. Oh dear, that's going in a really bad Freudian direction. Let's make this like this. They're waving. Yep. Ooh, nearly got super Freudian there. Let's give them little feet so it looks less phallic. There we go. We escaped that one. And right down the middle is the split. Half the person is trying to make the delusional psychotic fantasy land real because they've invested so much in it, because they're not ready to say, oh my God, I was coerced into a dungeon in this monstrous scenario and I've been living in this insane delusional psychotic fantasy land. And the other half of the person is saying, no, this person is a liar. This person has abused you. This whole thing has been a charade. So, as I said to you yesterday, you have two pains. You have the pain of continuing to try and keep the narcissistic, delusional, psychotic fantasy land alive, or you have the pain of accepting it's a deeper pain, but it lasts for a short period of time. The whole thing was false. The whole thing was just fabrication from start to finish. Okay, I will now take questions. I said I'd spend more time on questions tonight. Make them one sentence long, have them end in a question mark, and I will do the very best I can for you. No. Oops. What are your thoughts on Candace Owens? I don't really think about Candace Owens very much. Mental health decline. Now she seems to have trust issues when it comes to blue eyes. I don't know anything about that. I know that she was not treated very well by her former employer. As to blue-eyed trust issue disorder, she doesn't like the White Walkers, they that come down from the north, the zombies with no feeling to infect the earth. I don't know anything about that. William the Caterpillar. Bizarre how narcissistic personality disorder is so similar in traits, as if they've all been trained at the same school of life. As partners, are we trained in the I'll take abuse school? Many are in childhood. It seems to be the case that some people had a perfectly fine childhood and they were trained into it in adulthood. Will you keep this formulation, develop a model? It's not really a formulation. I knew somebody was going to ask me that, so I deliberately screenshotted it because I don't know how to keep this stuff, because I just started playing with this whiteboard today. But new board. There we go. That's what I wanted. I'll keep it somewhere. But it's not really it's not really. It's just a drawing. I mean, I can share it on Instagram, or I'll share it on Instagram. I'll share it on Instagram tomorrow. Would you agree that religion can breed narcissists? I would. And it's not my opinion. There's plenty of published research on that. It's the extreme end of religiosity, whether it breeds narcissists or whether narcissistic personality disordered people are drawn to extreme ideologies, or whether they make ideologies extreme. I'm not sure about, but yes, there is a correlation between extreme religiosity and narcissism and psychopathy. Rend, cause great emotional pain to a personal heart. Oxford Dictionary. It's a good word, rend. But then I was thinking maybe a lot of people wouldn't know what it meant and it would create more confusion, because splitting is a bit confusing. But rending is good. To render asunder. What's the best way for one to forgive themselves for falling in the narcissist trap or even being susceptible to it in the first place? The best way is to think of yourself as the way you would think of a friend. Would you berate a friend who'd fallen in love with a narcissist for months and years after the relationship had ended? Or would you be kind to them and say, listen, it's okay, you made a mistake, you can move on? So if you would do that for a friend, why can't you do that for yourself? Would be my question. You're not especially bad. They're not especially good. You're just a person. And as a person, you're allowed to make mistakes. Don't listen to people who tell you that you're not allowed to make mistakes, because they're lying. How far will they go? As in, what will they do to keep you in? It depends person to person. I've seen extremely odd behavior bordering on criminal. I have had 2 women actively use black magic on me to try and keep me in a relationship. And then there's the usual abusive relationship that they knew I wanted to leave. And then there's the usual tricks and tactics that anybody would do. Peter is here. I don't know how to pronounce Polish words. Dobry. CZ together is zy. Witzel. Don't know how to say that. Sorry, mate. Stationary quest. Why sometimes when you stop reacting to a narcissist, they become empathetic and understanding? Is that real? I'm confused. If you stop reacting to them in the way that they want you to, they'll just change strategies. They'll change tactics. So if being harsh with you, if they realize that you recognize harsh treatment as abuse, they can change tack and be like, okay, I'll be warm and empathic, and I'll get them to soften their boundaries again. You'll notice you've been through this cycle a few times, haven't you? When do I know I'm really healed? Says Naomi. You won't ask that question when you are really healed. If you're still asking that question, then there is still some healing to be done. What's the role of enablers in the shared fantasy? Well, it depends on, if you've got a romantic shared fantasy between 2 people, can't really see much need for enablers there. If it's more of an organizational thing or a cult type situation, then you would have enablers for that, I guess. How do I stop loving her? Wow, if I could bottle that, I'd be a rich man, wouldn't I? Just switch off love. Have you watched the movie The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? Don't. It'll make you terribly sad if you're already heartbroken. It's a good movie, though. I think I would suggest seeking the help of a qualified therapist or a counselor to talk through the grieving process that you're in. Don't try to do it all on your own. You're grieving, and grieving is a skill. and usually people need support through very intense grieving. So I suggest you get a little bit of help with that, mate. What accent is that? Fucking hate glasses so badly. No, that's not helping. I try and close my eye once sometimes. It does nothing. I see there's an accent over your first A, but I don't recognize the accent. Or is that a D? Sredan Popovic. Sredan. What's that accent there? Richard, can you elaborate on why every narcissist is ungrateful? The entitlement. The entitlement, simply put. They are owed things, are they not? They are kings and queens of the earth, and we are their mere servants. And so when you serve them, you are merely doing your rightful duty. They don't owe you any gratitude. It is only right that you serve them. Becky says, I may be addicted to the delusion. Would that be from being codependent or the narcissistic abuse? Well, the narcissistic abuse drives you into at least a temporary state of codependency. And as the narcissist is an addict for supply, you will find yourself becoming addicted to the fantasy space across time. And so in order to break away from that, there needs to be a systematic way of going cold turkey. As it happens, I have a course on that. It's called Narcissistic Matrix Reintegration, and it's to help you to get through the addiction to the delusional fantasy space with the narcissist. And it's on offer at the moment. So if you go over to richardgrannon.com, you can get that, and you get a second course for free, which is, these are both new courses. I shot them just a few months ago. And the second course is looking at a type of CPTSD that I hypothesize only develops through narcissistic abuse and how to recover from it. Let me catch up to the newest comments. I'm a little bit far behind here. Is there a common attachment style for narcissism? I'm not really the guy for attachment styles. I never looked into them. I didn't learn them. Yes, the most common attachment style for narcissists is anxious avoidant. But it's not really my thing. Jody says your course plus cold showers helps with narcissistic addiction. God bless you for taking cold showers. Bumblebee says, how do all narcissists know the same rules of abuse, and us as empath didn't? I think you can simplify that. If you did an exercise in evil, nasty empathy, and you imagine that you were going to put on a VR headset, and inside of that headset, you're playing a game where you are the narcissistic abuser, and all you want to do is to harvest as much narcissistic supply from people as possible. Once you've put yourself in that mindset, you can see that these are fairly straight lines they're moving along from their point of view to manipulate validation, attention, adoration, undue attention, to sort of draw them out from people, to bully it out from people. And I think that's the best explanation I've been able to come up with up until now. So it would almost be like battle tactics. If you're all operating via this, say you have all different regiments from all different countries, and they have the same job to do, and they're all operating with the same equipment and based on the same principles, then downstream of the equipment, the objective, the principles, the tactics are going to be very, very similar, because there isn't that many ways of getting a job done. But it's a great question. I've thought about it for literally for years. Why is it all so similar? And that's the best I can come up with. Catching up with new comments. There's a lot of comments coming through now, folks. I'm sorry if I don't get to you. What do you think? Irvin is here. He says, what do you think about use clinical? Is this possible? Diagnosis of MPD to disallow a person to occupy a chair or role in a family or in a social role. What would be necessary to do? Saludos. Yo no creo que sería posible. Yo no creo que sería algo que podemos hacer en el mundo, en realidad, porque tenemos nuestros putos derechos humanos. You've got human rights. You can't force people. I mean, if there were certain roles, like if it was government or military, I would say make them, because the responsibility is that high. But there's no guarantee. There's two problems with that. There's no guarantee that you're going to catch everyone through, like, clinical testing is essentially filling out questionnaires. That's all the technology that we have. And the other thing is, you don't, this is tough. You don't want to weed everybody out who's high in trait narcissism for some of these roles. Because being high in trait narcissism and high in certain psychopathic instincts could be beneficial for some roles. So I like your idea. I like the way you're thinking. I think in theory, it sounds good. When it meets the real world, it would be problematic. Like a lot of the issues we have nowadays, I think the technology is just not there. If we had technology that would just, like, I don't know, take a scan of your brain or your mind or something, and you couldn't trick it, you couldn't deceive it, and it knew if you were, I would say test them for evil intent. Forget about narcissism. Are they of evil intent? If they're of evil intent, then they don't get in. But then again, tenemos nuestros putos derechos humanos, ¿no? Pero en mi mundo, no, porque soy lo más, how do you say that? Lo más fascista en todo el mundo. Y cuando digo que no, es que no. I would just make them all do it. But I'm not a nice man. I can't believe the clinical testing where people admit to being a narcissist. They lie too much to get an honest answer and have no self-awareness to be answering any questionnaire. Honestly, they lie too much. That's true, but they do have self-awareness. There's this terrible myth that's developed online. I don't know who started it. It's spread. You all know that the original word for meme wasn't funny picture. It's a concept from Richard Dawkins, and it's a play on the word gene, and it's a mental gene. It's a mind gene. It replicates and it spreads and it moves around. And this is a meme that has gone around the narcissism world, and I run up against it 3 or 4 times every single day of my working life. They do have self-awareness. We know that they have self-awareness. We know clinically that they have self-awareness, and we know that they lie. And there are tests. They're long-winded tests that the psychologists say they have tested again and again and again with multiple populations that work around people's capacity to lie. How true that is, I don't know, because I've not studied them. Why? Lazy. I don't like any part of psychology that has anything to do with statistics. So I'm too lazy to look. But yeah, they lie. They lie for sure. What are some vulnerabilities of narcissists? Oh, plenty. They're actually very vulnerable creatures. And it's easy to play a narcissist. They frequently are played. I mean, I would suspect the most frequent and deepest and easiest victim of a narcissist would be somebody else who's extremely high in trait narcissism, if not full-blown MPD themselves. And in my observation, in my personal life, for what it's worth, and in my professional life, narcissistically abusive relationships between 2 highly narcissistic people are weirdly more stable They're incredibly turbulent, but in a very predictable cycle. So more stable and more durable than between a narcissist and a codependent. A codependent eventually is going to crumble because their milkshake is being drank dry every day. But two narcissists can go after it for a while. The vulnerabilities are they're extremely vain. They're extremely self-absorbed. They're incredibly impressionable. They're very easy to charm. I mean, if you want to deal with a narcissist, I don't know if this expression makes sense. I've always said you plug them back into themselves. So they're looking to plug into someone to draw supply from. You can just plug them back into themselves. Just tell them they're amazing. And they're, or you obviously don't be that stupid. Don't be that obvious. You've got to be a little bit cunning. You've got to be a little bit clever. You have to be a little bit of a ninja. But put them in a mental space where they're feeling they can drink their own narcissistic supply. They can be self-sufficient for bursts of time. You can remind them of wonderful things that they've done. You can remind them of all the evidence that exists in the world that the grandiose false self matches reality, the reality of who they are. Well, remind them, gaslight them, essentially. You can manipulate them. It's very easy to manipulate. So they're vulnerable to manipulation. They're very impressionable, extraordinarily naive, childlike in their approach to life, fantastical, they're grandiose. I don't know any narcissist ever who made good long-term decisions. They usually need, if they're an effective grandiose narcissist, they usually have a very good support system around them. They make terrible, and I'll say it once more, terrible decisions. They're really bad at decision making because you have a child locked inside of an adult's body. They're incredibly emotionally dysregulated. They're enormously anxious, and that anxiety warps their perceptions. And so their executive function is very, very poor. So those are the vulnerabilities of narcissists. I should do a YouTube video titled "The Secret Vulnerabilities of Narcissists." It'll get 1 million views in an afternoon. Kalispera from Greece. Sometimes I'm wondering if we quit all the people who are suffering from a kind of disorder, what world we will really leave to our children? If we quit all the people, do you mean like? What do you mean quit them? Just hit quit. Hit quit on the simulation. If everybody who had narcissistic personality disorder disappeared from the face of the planet overnight tonight, it's hard to say because narcissistic personality disorder is a disorder that's typically comorbid. So are we talking about pure narcissists, psychopaths? Honestly, if you're just talking about narcissistic personality disorder, the world would function a lot better. There isn't really much use in narcissistic personality disorder. When I was talking about government and the military before, you need people who are high in trait narcissism for certain roles. It actually is adaptive, not maladaptive. But being high in trait narcissism is different to the disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder isn't useful for much. High in trait narcissism, you would have a grandiosity of vision. If they were also high in psychopathy, they would be courageous and risk-taking, which for builders of nations, etc., doers of great deeds, you need that. But people with narcissistic personality disorder, just narcissistic, but they don't offer much. They tend to just make a mess, in my humble opinion. So we wouldn't be leaving a bad world for our children if that was gotten rid of. Not that I'm suggesting it should be. Why? Porque tenemos nuestros putos derechos humanos. Human rights. Human rights. What would be a good way to silence your inner critic while around a narcissist and not show emotional dysregulation? Rozzo Drisele. Che fai, ragazzi? I think I'm very grateful for this question. There's a course that I created. I gave it a shitty name because I wasn't in my right mind at the time, or I don't know why I gave it this name. It's called Break Narcissistic Possession. But really, the course is the only thing it does, and it's a good thing, but it has one goal, which is to reduce the significance of the narcissist in your life to a storm has arrived, to your brain, to your body, to your emotions, so that you don't spike in adrenaline when you get a missed call from them, or you get a text from them, or they speak to you. So you're just kind of indifferent to them. So that course is called Break Narcissistic Possession. It's not a great name, but it's a good course, and it can help you to do that. A few more questions, and then I'm going to read my book and go to bed. Susan Marie says, I think I need a lobotomy. Jody Mitchell says, the lizard brain is hard to control. This is a long question. Andrea Cross. So, given those vulnerabilities, how great is the potential for those vulnerabilities on someone ticking the box of NPD, having been forged in trauma as a child? Wow, dude. So, given those vulnerabilities, how great is the potential for those vulnerabilities on someone ticking the boxes of NPD, having been forged in trauma as a child? Are you German? Why are you using German grammar? How great is the potential? Very great. It's super great, super duper, very. And if it was, wouldn't that suggest that properly healing the inner child? No, no. 9. Wouldn't that suggest that properly healing the inner child might clear or at least diminish those vulnerabilities and reduce the narcissistic traits? No, that's it's I follow your logic. I do follow the reasoning, and superficially it would seem to make sense. However, let's be philosophical about this. What do you mean when you say properly healing the inner child? You got to think, like, practically, what does that mean in the real world? What does that mean in the real world? You're sitting down, you're a therapist, and you're sitting down and you look, and there's somebody with narcissistic personality disorder sat in the therapy room with you, and you go, we're going to properly heal the inner child and clear those vulnerabilities. As I mentioned before, as far as technology goes, we don't have the tech for that. All we have is talk therapy, and it's very philosophical. It's very Socratic in nature. It's a dialogue. You know, somebody will say something, and then the therapist says, how do you know that that's true? Are there ever any situations in which that's not true? What I think you're saying is X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? When I feedback this to you, how do you feel about that? And you help the client sort through. That's a client who wants to get better. That's a client who wants to change. What would you do with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder? I think as well, the idea, like, healing the inner child. Let's heal the inner child. I'm in doing transactional analysis therapy. I do it once a week for an hour a week, and I have been now for over 6 months. It's probably 8 months now. And a lot of what we do is around working with the child part, the child ego state. And it's very, very specific work with transactional analysis. So I would, if you were like if we were at university and I was a lecturer and you suggested that to me, I would say, okay, Give me 2,000 words on what healing the inner child looks like. What does it mean practically in a therapeutic setting with a client who doesn't think they have anything wrong with them and whose personality disorder is fundamentally set to reject external feedback? That's the purpose. That narcissistic personality disorder serves a purpose. You asked, is it based in childhood trauma? Yes, it's a shield. It's a shield against reality. Their whole thing is to keep reality at bay. The essence. So we'll say things like the essence of narcissistic personality disorder is narcissistic supply. True. The essence of narcissistic personality disorder is the false self. Also true. But when you're talking about blind, childlike, Freudian drives, the essence of narcissistic personality disorder is no. It's a child's no. It's a toddler's no. It's denial. And it's rigid. It's muscular. It's the child grabbing the toy that they don't want to share. No. Or not going to bed or not doing what their parents tell them. No. No. And then they take it into adulthood. Have you paid your taxes this year? No. Are you going to stop cheating on your wife? No. Gonna start loving your children? Tell them you love them? No, 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 no. They don't want to. So that's the essence of narcissistic personality disorder is the maintenance of the false self through the garnering of narcissistic supply. Yes, but that's the adult intellectual interpretation. The more blind, basic, primal, just past the pre-verbal phase drive is no, is denial. No, stay back, stay away. I don't want the truth. I don't want to hear it. Well, what is the therapeutic process? Except leading the client to truth. Who said that? Carlos Gustavio Jungio Menendez Velasquez Lobo Guerrero. He was from Uruguay. I'm going to tell everybody from now on. He is Carlos Gustavio Jungio Velasquez Rodriguez. Sorry. Just a couple more questions. I'm a little bit tired. Being silly now. Do you think it's possible for a narcissist to be born that way, or is there some other condition? It's mainly childhood experiences, but the research suggests there is a genetic component to that. I don't believe anyone with narcissistic personality disorder was purely born with narcissistic personality disorder. There might be. We know that there's genetic propensities for some of the traits that you look for. There's genetic propensity towards. I'm trying to remember. This is actually a piece of research that I read. It would be so impressive if I could just rattle it off. I read it recently as well. Grandiosity. Jealousy or envy, however you want to say it. Grandiosity, jealousy, self-absorption. I'm sorry, I can't remember, but yes, there's a genetic root to them. But you must never fall prey to the trap of splitting the idea that it's all genetic or all environmental. Nothing is. Nothing is. Everything is impacted. There's an interaction between the two. Why are you shouting? Children are fragile. They break. You okay? And then you say, some children, they do not break. Why are we shouting? Thank you, Jessica. Do most live in a state of anger and rage? The baseline is anxiety. Perhaps not anxiety as you and I would know it, but it is anxiety. and shame. It's a very shame-based personality disorder. A lot of these theatrics and machinations are there to cover up very intense feelings of shame. We referenced Freud. We've referenced Carlos Gustavo Jungio, and we should also reference Alfred Adler, the creator of the concept of the inferiority complex. So though they will seem to want to appear very grandiose, very egotistical, and very superior all of the time, most of you are psychologically literate enough here to know that that's naturally driven by its opposite, which is the inferiority complex. Anger and rage. There will be rage if there is narcissistic injury, then there'll be narcissistic rage. If you see somebody who's living almost perpetually in a state of anger or rage, they may have narcissistic personality disorder, but it's more likely to be comorbid with borderline personality disorder. Before everybody gets very upset with me in the comments about what I just said, that is one of the defining diagnostic criterion for borderline personality disorder. I did not write the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. I am not a doctor, nor am I a psychiatrist. That is one of the criterion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or anything else, but if there's a lot of rage going on and you think the person is narcissistic, so you see somebody who's highly narcissistic, highly rageful, anyone who knows personality disorders, any qualified clinician who's worth their salt, will be exploring the possibility of borderline personality disorder. Can narcissist personality be caused by a bash to the back of the head? A seemingly foolish question. However, I researched this for a long time because I was convinced that one of my exes had I'd either had a mini stroke or some kind of like brain damage when she was a kid, because the interaction that I was getting with her was like, it was extremely psychotic. It was obviously, there was borderline, there was narcissism there, but she went beyond, above and beyond. And sometimes I was talking to her and she reminded me of somebody else I'd known who had had CTE from boxing. It would be much more impressive if I could remember the research. However, I can't, because I used to box and I have a traumatic brain injury. There's a part of the brain that can be damaged. It's not frontal lobe. I remember looking this up the last time I was in Ibiza. Okay, I'll have to get the research out. I can't remember it. There is a part. So if there's a certain type of brain injury that damages a certain part of the brain, and there's research that said this part of the brain controls empathy, and if it gets damaged in adolescence, it could bring about narcissistic personality disorder. And alarm bells went on for me, because went off for me, not on, they go off in English. I was like, I'm not a doctor, but usually when somebody says this part of the brain controls this or that, it usually does that plus like another 52 things at the same time. And so I looked into it, and the part of the brain that they were looking at that they claimed if it got damaged would affect somebody's capacity for empathy and potentially bring about narcissistic personality disorder, the part of the brain that I now can't remember. Yes, it does control other functions, but they made a fairly convincing case to me that yes, certain types of brain, there's even in utero injury that could do it. So during the pregnancy or during the birth, there's birth trauma, there's pregnancy trauma that can affect the brain. And it does seem as though there's a possibility that certain specific types of brain damage couldn't give you full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, but could lay the groundwork for a situation when narcissistic personality disorder is more likely to develop. Should I do a video on this? Should I do it? I think I should. It was really interesting, and it hurt my brain to do. It pushed my brain. I don't usually push my brain very much. Richard, what is to be done with all of these maladaptive people? I don't know, darling. I don't know. I wish I did know, but I don't. Perhaps we should feed them all to Armie Hammer. Handsome man. Did a few good films. Pretty good actor. Apparently wants to eat people. Hashtag awkward. Could meningitis cause it? I have to look. I have to go back and look at the research again. There are certain types of brain damage that could lay the groundwork for the development of MPD. So I'll have a look. Question: if you're so good, if ambient micro penis says, if you're so good, when will you be healed yourself? Well, ambient. I never said I was good, man. You know, I'm a human being. Got to stay in therapy. What do you think I'm in therapy for? What do you think I need healing for? Do you know me? Do you know my whole life? Do you know my life story? Do you think because, so from your point of view, you go, here's a guy who talks about narcissism. So therefore, I'm going to use my micro to figure out that I know his whole fucking life. Do you think the major obstacle that I've faced in my life is being in narcissistically abusive relationships? Or do you think that might be downstream of other things? Because you don't know everything about everyone. In fact, ambient, stinky, ambient little micro penis. You don't know much at all. Now fuck off my channel. Dr. Romani, I could be petty too. Dr. Romani releases the same book every year and has the what are we doing? If you don't like her, don't watch her stuff, man. Come on. Come on. Listen. Don't make me block a bunch of people. It's optional. It's free material. She's putting out free material. If you don't like it, like watch something else. You don't have to analyze her or so. What is a narcissistic stare? Is that in the diagnostic and statistical manual? Like the therapist there going, bit starey, narcissism. Just don't watch her stuff, man. If you don't like her stuff, don't watch it. What's the best revenge on a narcissist? I like this. I can go on my laptop. This is much more fun. Is it a Jewish, an old Jewish saying, the best revenge is living well? Oh, George Herbert, 16th century poet. All right, I was giving it to. Are you sure? George Herbert, 1640. George Herbert, 16. All right, then, fine. The living well is the best revenge. I thought it was an old Jewish proverb. That's what I do. If I don't know who it is, I say